In this video, we're going to be taking a look at some of the most popular 100-watt portable folding solar panels on the market that range from anywhere between $170 all the way up to about $400, and we'll be testing out their charging speeds in both full sun and simulated cloud coverage, and comparing portability and build quality, and wrapping it up with a pros and cons discussion to help you make the best decision when you pick up your next portable solar panel. The panels we're going to be looking at in this video are the BioLite Solar Panel 100, the AllPowers SP027, the Oupes 100-watt panel, the VDL 100-watt panel, and finally the Jackery Solar Saga 100. And I also created a spreadsheet which makes it a little easier for you to compare the specs and features of these panels. That also includes my test results, and that will be linked to down in the description below in case you want to check that out. And also links you can use to purchase these items and help support the channel at no additional cost to you. Before we dive in, be sure to smash the thumbs up button and subscribe to the channel if you're new here. I'm going to be giving away a 10,000 milliamp hour power bank that I found on Amazon in the video, and entering to win is really simple, and all you have to do is comment down below and let us know which solar panel from the lineup is your favorite, and I'll be randomly selecting a winner with the comment picker app, and I'll post them on my community page next Friday. We're going to kick things off with the charging test, and this test was done right about noon on June 23rd, 2023, just 2 days after the summer solstice, and conditions are about as good as they're ever going to be for me to perform these tests. And I'm going to be using my Oupes 600-watt power station and my BioLite 1500 to help me get the watt readings. The best performing panel was the VDL, and I was able to get an 83-watt output, and this brings the actual dollar cost per watt tested to $2.17, which really impressed me. And it came in at 10% higher than the next closest panels, which was actually a tie between the Oupes 100-watt panel and the Jackery Solar Saga 100, who both maxed out at 73 watts, bringing their price per watt of the Oupes to $3.42, and the price per watt on the Jackery to $4.11. BioLite's panel came in 4th place for efficiency here with a max output of 66 watts, which brings the dollar cost per watt tested to $6.06, which is the most expensive in the lineup. And finally, the AllPowers panel came in at 64 watts, but the cost per watt tested was only $2.66, making it the second most affordable in terms of cost per watt of all the panels here. We're going to do another solar charging test, and this time we're going to be simulating thick cloud coverage with this shade cloth to get a better idea of how intense clouds affect the performance of these panels. And here's a look at how these panels stacked up against each other in watts against their previous results. And as you can see, all of these panels did take a substantial dip down in the charging speeds, but the VDL panel was still the fastest at 14 watts, followed closely behind by the AllPowers SP027 and the Jackery Solar Saga, both at 13 watts. And the AllPowers panel did do better in the test relative to how it performed against the other panels in the full sun test, which I was impressed by. The Oupes panel came in at 11 watts, and it was affected by the shade compared to the other panels, and the BioLite panel brought up the rear with a 10-watt total. Ultimately, all of the panels were still able to operate in partial shade, which is a good sign, and it means that your charging experience won't be totally interrupted when the weather changes. If you're just going to be gently using these panels from time to time, build quality might not mean all that much to you, but if you're going to be using them a lot and engaging in outdoor activities, you're going to want to make sure you get a panel that's built to last, and in the event that they get dropped or maybe they get some water on them, you want to make sure the panel can handle it. The BioLite 100-watt solar panel has ETFE lamination, which improves performance and durability. It extends the panel's lifespan and requires far less maintenance when compared to a PET exterior layer that's used by the lower end portable solar chargers. And this is the most durable construction type, so if that's important to you, this is probably the best option in the lineup. Another cool feature on these is that there's a built-in sundial, which makes it very easy to position the panel in an optimal position, and they did go the extra mile in protecting USB outputs with coverings as well, which is really nice to see. VDL's panel also has ETFE lamination and an IP67 rating, which means that it has an excellent dust resistance, and it can also withstand water submersion up to 1 meter for half an hour, which is great. The only downside to this design is that the charging cable is exposed and it is not protected like the other panels, so you might need to be a bit more careful when you're moving this one around. The Oupes 100-watt panel also has ETFE, and it does have decent water resistance, though no official IP rating is given, and there's a zippered compartment here for protecting the cables. The panel feels very nice and sturdy, and there's barely any flex here, which is a very reassuring feature. The AllPowers SP027 has a PET coating, which is the less durable and less long-lasting material, but it does claim to have water and dust resistance. It does have an IP66 rating, so it's basically splash proof, though the build quality is a little more flimsy than the other panels, but it is nice that it has a zippered pocket on the back, which you can use to protect and store your charging cables. Finally, the Jackery Solar Saga 100 also has ETFE lamination, and it is IP65 rated, so it should hold up well to light splashing. And this panel does have a bit of flex to it, and there's also a zippered compartment on the back which protects the charging cables. Since all of these panels were designed to be portable, it's important to see how they stack up in size and weight so you can get a better sense of their overall portability. And now we've got all of the panels lined up by their weights in pounds and ounces, and you can also find their folded dimensions in inches beneath that. And there isn't a tremendous difference between the panels, but a few pounds here or there might make a difference for you. And the lightest panel in the group was the AllPowers, coming in at 7 pounds 15 ounces, followed closely behind by the Jackery and the Oupes. We do jump up a bit in weight to 9 pounds 8 ounces with the BioLite panel. And finally, the VDL panel is the heaviest at 10 pounds 9.9 ounces. The Oupes does have the smallest footprint, followed closely behind by the BioLite, and the other 3 panels are the larger bifold style panels, so they're a bit more bulky to store. Now we're going to take a look at the charging cables that each of these panels come with, and a few of these panels do also offer a few different USB options that I wanted to touch on briefly as well. The BioLite comes with an HPP cable, which does have more limited compatibility options than many of the other panels here, but it does also have a USB-C PD 45 watt output and 2 USB-A outputs, which can all be used simultaneously, which makes it very easy for you to directly charge your USB powered devices. And I was able to get a 35 watt output reading on the USB-C output and an 8 watt output on the Type A port during my testing of the solar panels. The only other panel with USB outputs is the Jackery Solar Saga 100, and it also has a USB-C and a USB-A output, and I was able to record 8 watt output on the USB outputs as well during my previous test. And it has a DC style cable interface in a few different sizes, and while it is designed for many of the Jackery power stations, it is compatible with others that accept a DC input, like the Oupes power station that I used to collect charging speed data earlier in this video. The Oupes 100 watt panel doesn't have any USB outputs, but it does have a 7909 DC connector and is compatible with many of the Oupes power stations, but there are adapters which you can purchase to make them compatible with different power stations. The AllPowers SP027 comes with an MC4 cable and both Anderson and DC connectors, so it does play really nice with many of the most popular power stations on the market without the need to purchase any additional adapters. The VDL panel also has an MC4 cable, and it comes with an Anderson and XT60 connector and also a DC 5521 and a DC 7909, so it does have very impressive compatibility right out of the box as well. I put all of the performance and specs data together and gave each panel a score out of 100 and plotted them on this chart so you can get a better idea of their true value and performance. I gave them a score out of 30 on their charging speed in full sun, a shade charging score out of 30, a score out of 20 on their portability based on their size and weight, and a score out of 20 on their build quality. And I totaled them all up and gave them a final score out of 100, and on the x-axis you'll see how they scored, and on the y-axis you can see their price. Coming in first place and scoring 83 points out of 100, and the clear winner of the group was the VDL 100 watt solar panel, which did give us the best watt output score in both full sun and under the shade cloth, and it also had a great build quality with full ETFE lamination, and it actually is the second most affordable panel in the group and can be picked up on Amazon for about $180. It also came with multiple connector types, so the compatibility is great, and overall I was really impressed by the VDL and definitely hoping to get some more of their panels in the future. The only real downside is that it is the heaviest panel in the group and there's no USB outputs, but this might not be a concern for everybody. Next up we have the Jackery Solar Saga 100, which scored 77 points, and this one was tied for second place with the Oupes panel when it came to watts, and it had the best portability score, and this one also has USB outputs, which is very convenient. This is a good option to go with if you've got a Jackery or another compatible panel, but out of the box it's really only going to be compatible with a limited number of power stations, so you do get less flexibility here. This is one of the more expensive panels at $300, but at the moment Amazon is actually selling refurbished Jackeries for $209, which does bring the cost per tested watt down to $2.86, which is a much better deal for the panel. Like I mentioned, the Oupes panel also did pretty well in terms of watts and portability and scored 76 out of 100, but again we're dealing with limited compatibility with other panels and no USB outputs. It does pack down into a very compact package, which is quite convenient, so if portability is a priority for you, this is definitely a good option to consider. I've had this panel for about a year and it does pair nicely with the Oupes 600 watt power station, and if you want to check out a review on those two, I'll post a link to that down in the description below. Next up we've got the BioLite panel, and this one scored 75 points, and I must admit that it didn't do as well as expected in the watt output test, coming in at 66 watts, which I do think is pretty low for a panel which claims a 100 watt output, and it was also tested with the BioLite power station it was designed to be used with, so it did have every advantage working in its favor. Where it did do really well was build quality, and hands down this panel is the most durable panel with full ETFE lamination, and it also did have the best performing USB-C output, which clocked in at 35 watts. So if you want to be able to charge USB gadgets directly from the panel, this one did perform the best. It is also on the expensive side at $400, but I have seen it on sale for $300 a few times, which does make it much easier to justify, but there is limited compatibility with this panel outside of the BioLite ecosystem. Finally, the AllPowers SP027 brought up the rear with 74 points, which really isn't too bad relatively speaking, and considering it was the most affordable panel in the lineup at $170 on Amazon. And again, the max output in my testing was 64 watts, but it is easier to be more forgiving considering it is the cheapest panel. The compatibility options are really great with the SP027, and it was the most lightweight panel in the lineup. Thanks so much for watching the video, and if you enjoyed it, be sure to give it a thumbs up. And if you have any ideas for gear comparisons like this one, please let me know what your ideas are down in the comments below. And if you want to pick up any of these panels and help support the channel, you can find a link down in the description.